Well, I've been taking a class with Dr. Brown. It's a special topics class on multicultural literature, and we have been troubling the question, what exactly is multicultural literature? Multicultural literature is widely defined. We did a constructivist protocol, which means we looked at various definitions and viewpoints on how to define multicultural literature, and it's just so many different ways to look at it. I'm trying to avoid othering at all in education, and I think that the model I would follow as a facilitator or a teacher is to find opportunities where students value multicultural themes, as opposed to doing a unit on Judaism or a unit on Latino heritage or a unit on African American literature. I think that all those different cultures and ethnicities are so broad and so varied that to sum it up in one unit would be disrespectful in my opinion. The project did not start as a web project or writing project. Initially, I was facilitating a 7th and 8th grade writing workshop at a West Philadelphia public school. And in this writing workshop, the initial goal was to provide opportunities for students to continue conversations that they were having in class about texts we were reading. And Harrison Bergeron was one. There were two other texts that we've read so far. And what would happen is all these questions and conversation and discussion would happen. And as soon as we get to the heart of the conversation, the bell would ring and class would be over and then all would be lost. And I realized eventually that students were identifying multicultural themes, even in texts that were not considered multicultural literature. And I decided that they needed more opportunities to expand those ideas. And so I created the writing workshop to pair with the actual reading of the text and a discussion of the text. And so the writing would now be their opportunity to say more about certain ideas that they thought were important in the books. The advantages of my ideal way of applying multicultural literature would be that the focus is student-centered. You are relying on students' cultural awareness. You're relying on what students believe to be important cultural and multicultural themes relevant in the text, whether the texts are considered multicultural or not. So take, for example, the story Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. That short story has a protagonist that is not ethnically, culturally, linguistically identified at all. It's a male protagonist. The title character, Harrison, is not identified by race, culture, or language, and so students were still able to bring up issues of culture within the overarching theme that was equality. And so the theme of the story, Harrison Bergeron, was not specifically related to any culture, ethnicity, race, or language. The overarching theme was equality, but the students in my 7th and 8th grade writing workshop saw value in that theme of equality, and they made a text-to-world connection and also text-to-self connections by looking at how equality is viewed in their immediate communities, but also how equality was viewed in our society 30, 40, 50 years ago, because the story Harrison Bergeron itself was taking place in the future, in the year 2081, where equality was still an issue, obviously. So you take a theme that is not necessarily multicultural, and you listen for students' cultural awareness through their inquiry, through their questions that they ask about the text. And then I use the writing workshop as a vehicle to develop and further their ideas that they began in class discussions.